audience. So I'm visiting here from Canada, which is a country located just north of the United States. And I have a PhD in humor studies, so they've invited me here to add a little bit of gravitas to this occasion. But also to try to put our discussion of what makes China laugh into a broader context. For example, I think we could consider equally valid questions like, of course, what makes China laugh, what made China laugh in the past and still does, what makes China laugh now, and what makes Canada laugh. So it's often said that China has 5,000 years of comedy, and we're going to go through all of it in the next 10 minutes, joke by joke. So history. Let's start with one of the earliest Chinese jokes from about the 3rd century. Right? A man of Lu, from the state of Lu, was trying to carry a bamboo pole through the city gates. First he tried to carry it through vertically, but he failed. So he tried horizontally, but he failed again. He was at a loss when this old man stopped by and said, "I'm no sage, but I've been around a bit. Why don't you try sawing the pole in half and bring it in that way?" And so he did. Now, if you didn't get that joke, you'll be happy to know that it came with a commentary, which was this: of all the dumb things in the world, nothing tops this. And to me, what this proves is that humorists are always closely followed by humor scholars. So let's jump ahead about 1,000 years to the Ming Dynasty, which was, I think, by far the funniest dynasty. The Ming gave us several picaresque novels, including a book of, I think, Divine Mischief, The Journey to the West, which features this anthropomorphic magical monkey named Sun Wukong, definitely a name to remember. The Ming also saw this. Here's a modern version of Sun Wukong, the Monkey King versus Transformer. But besides this, we also had this explosion in commercial publishing. So it used to be that reading was just for the snobby literati, but now you also had genre fiction, detective novels, and joke books. So I thought that you all being New Yorkers, you might appreciate a joke about real estate. So a man who liked peace and quiet had the misfortune to live between 2 blacksmiths. And the racket from their hammer pummeled his ears day and night, making him miserable. He was often heard to remark, "If those two would just move, I would happily pay them in thanks." And so one day they showed up and said, "Guess what? We're moving." He said, "Fantastic." So he paid them and he treated them to a drink. And he said, "So where are you guys moving to?" And one said, "I'm moving to his place and he's moving to me." So that illustration comes from actually a 1937 edition of like a joke anthology that include a lot of old jokes. But if you're interested in kind of earlier Chinese visual humor, you have to go no further than the Met. Just a couple days ago, went and saw an exhibition. So this dates back to 1757, and you can even find works of Chinese humor, visual humor, like sculpture of somebody losing a chest from the Han Dynasty. So I know you're all thinking, okay, maybe a joke or two was told during the last 2,000 years of imperial history, but what I really want to know is, do communists laugh? And I think an easy answer would be that some people would say they've been killing it for about 70 years now. They killed it during the Civil War, they killed it during land reform, they killed it again, all the way up to the Cultural Revolution, and some of the displays we begin this year are suggesting, we can still kill it. But do communists have humor? The answer is blank. This is an image that appeared first in the Shenzhen newspaper, and then it was picked up and circulated by the China Daily. The rulers of China know very well people need to be entertained. And in fact, they've known this for a very, very long time. Right? So you can see that, these memes circulating. I don't know if it was, a district chief from Gansu province who happened to carve these, if these are from abroad. But you still have jokes being circulated through the state media. And so I think this is really important to realize, because we often think of humor as being just a bottom-up grassroots thing. But in fact, there's this kind of parallel tradition which interacts with the grassroots tradition of top-down humor. So you even see reworkings of the oldest jokes in the book for new things like production, right? So I think when people are, And you also have other types of things, back in the old days, Cold War adversaries, like really, really trenchant stuff. So there's really a fascinating and extremely diverse history of comedy in China. And I think that, when time is limited, like now people tell jokes, when they have a bit more time, they tell stories. And Yang Jiang, one of my favorite modern writers, during the Cultural Revolution, she and her husband were sent down to the countryside to essentially do agricultural labor and to be re-educated by the peasants. And she wrote in one of her memoirs, I just want to share a very brief excerpt from a memoir she wrote in the 80s, saying that the first thing that they had to do with a vegetable plot was to construct an outhouse. And so any passerby would use the outhouse and they would collect fertilizer. And for modesty's sake, they added a curtain to their privy, right? And then the next morning, after they had built this thing and put on the curtain, they discovered not only was the curtain gone, but all of the waste was gone as well. And she said that this ended up being a recurring problem because, in her words, local wisdom had it that the waste produced by intellectuals was the best around. And Yang's husband, Qian Zhongshu, another one of my favorite writers, he was definitely a very bookish type. He larded both his stories and his literary criticism with, I think, similar types of wit and zingers. So there's a famous line by Alexander Pope, right, that tells us, "Let such teach others who themselves excel, and censure freely who have written well," which is a literary way of saying don't meddle in our internal affairs. But to Qian Zhongshu, he thought that this was like saying, before you can be, you must be a horse or a pig before you can be a good veterinarian. So I think this is an uncommon mind that speaks to concerns outside of China as well. So we'll talk a little bit more about kind of top-down versus bottom-down humor in the modern age. I just want to point out that the emperors of old also appreciated humor. So for example, who can tell me what is funny about this painting by a Ming Dynasty emperor? What's laughable about this? I'll take that as a no. But you can look a little closer. I've got a dog wagging his tail there. It turns out that one variant of the character Xiao is a dog under a bamboo radical, right? So this is what we have nowadays. But this is essentially a rebus, right? It's like a word game, so, for those in the know. And it turns out that this is not just ancient history. This is a game being played today in Japan, where there's a slightly different variant on it, right? We have, again, a dog under bamboo, same thing. When I came across this image on the net, I was thinking maybe the person didn't know how to spell. And it was under the dog. But then I realized, no, actually, they're not just laughing, they're bowled over with laughter. Because if you turn xiao upside down, they're xiao dao. You have been bowled over with laughter. And in fact, this is a game you see in early Chinese, in modern Chinese humor anthologies, where we have the Forest of Laughs, that early joke upside down to show that we're bowled over with laughter. So this is why Chinese is so fun. Right? This is why Chinese is so fun. And political humor is certainly rife with puns. So we have this, one of the villains of modern Chinese history, Yuan Shikai. He was president of the Republic of China. He really wanted to be emperor. He did become emperor for about 83 days in 1916 before he died of illness. And from Yuan's era, we have a lot of caricatures of this guy, right? Very self-important military man. But we also have puns, because his name Yuan sounds like Yuan or ape. So we have all of these things about apes. This is kind of a meme of the print culture age. But very importantly, Sun Zhongshan, the father of the nation, even though he shares the same name with Sun Wukong, he is not a chimp. No one would ever suggest that. So there are still some limits to political humor and to punning in China. But what we can definitely say about this period is the modern era, you had the rise of a popular press that was very into humor and sold ridicule and laughter of all types. You also had the coining of the modern term for humor, or yomo, in 1924. This became a buzzword and is still one of the main terms that people use in China today. So there's a really interesting history of how we got to that moment. But tonight we're going to hear a little bit about performing comedy. I'm not a performing comic myself, but we have one here tonight. And the different types of comic performance that make China laugh. So for example, xiangsheng from Beijing and Tianjin was all the rage before the People's Republic, right? For decades, it was a really lively, modern, popular art form. And And some actually interesting things changed after the founding of the People's Republic in 1949, where the state became a major patron of stand-up comedy, believe it or not. And so you had a new livelihood for many, many comics. The problem, of course, is you can get co-opted, and so the traditional comics would distinguish between their vegetarian fare, which is family-friendly, the sude, and then the funde, the slightly meatier dishes for different sensibilities, or fleshier dishes, you could say. And Perry Link has written one classic of double entendre called The Birdie Won't Chirp, which maybe we can save for discussion. But one of the workarounds, and this is kind of the vegetarian fare that you would get, like practice good hygiene. Not terribly funny stuff. But one of the workarounds that people came up with in the 1950s was essentially at the comedy clubs, everyone would be chowing down on meat, so to speak. But if a cadre walked in, someone would stand up and start singing "The East is Red," and then everybody else would follow suit. So if anybody came in late, let's get you caught up on the 5,000 years of comedy. Essentially, the legendary three dynasties of antiquity were pretty funny thanks to the philosophers Confucius and Zhuangzi. You have the Qin dynasty where they burned books and buried scholars alive, which is not funny. Han Dynasty was very funny. Then we have these, some other dynasties. Nobody really knows. It's anyone's guess. Tang Dynasty had a big rebellion in the middle, so it's not terribly funny. Song Dynasty is known for being more stuffy than funny. But then the Yuan Dynasty, of course, has the Mongols. You should never laugh at a Mongol. The Ming Dynasty was extremely funny. The Ming Dynasty was extremely funny. As I mentioned, the Qing was rather bitter, but you do have a lot of jokes about Manchus, if you're interested. The Republic of China, I think, was pretty funny. The Mao era was about 70% funny, 30% not funny. And then, of course, the post-Mao era is absolutely daft. So, I am a teacher. I'm going to leave you with some homework, which is, you see on the back of your sheet, there are some recommended readings for those who are curious, viewings if you like film or videos, including some featuring our participants, and studies if you're an academic like me. Okay, and that's also final examination. So, have you been paying attention? This is for a book giveaway, and Aaron's going to help me out here. So, be fast on your buzzer. Right? It is a school night. So this is for a copy of China's Chaplain, Comic Stories and Farces by Xu Zhuodai. And this is a book that features a Art Deco turkey. Since, as you all know, yesterday was
Canadian Thanksgiving.
Yes, well done. Which country, besides China, begins with a C and ends with an A? You get to decide who to give it to. This one? That's the one. That's the one. Give him a round of applause. Okay, for a copy of The Age of Irreverence. Who am I? That's pretty fast.
It came from over there someplace, I think.
From over that way? Okay, over here. Give a round of applause. So, for a copy of the Book of Swindles, which dynasty was the funniest?
Ming
Dynasty. No, the People's Republic of China.
You gotta call it. I heard a few over there. Well done.
Bravo!
Indeed, it was the late Ming. All right. And then for human, beast, and ghost, whose waist is the best one?
Intellectual.
All right, that was over here. Bravo.
Back here.
For this last question, I want to call to the stage a very special Canadian. My mother, everybody. Last book here. This is the hardest question. As you've all noticed, I took an effort to dress up tonight, so I want to ask you, what does my necktie say? And here's, for those of you who can't see on the back.
German guys?
Right over here first.
Oh,
And what does that mean?
you can only drive.
Dry clean only. Oh, very much. China laugh is exactly the same as what makes Canada laugh. Teen at times. So you can go home now, or since you already know what makes China laugh, or you can stay with us. We're talking about grassroots humor, official humor, all kinds of humor, and what it's like being a stand-up comic in China State. So please join me in welcoming to the stage Nora and Jesse.